Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening wherever you are in the world. I hope you're all well. Today I thought I'd pop along and do one of my longer videos. So I'm going to create a card and I'm going to use some of my stamps, but I'll give you the measurement for the card. It's 4.5 inches by 6.5 inches. It's a size that I like using because it's quite appealing to my eye and works beautifully with the size of some of the stamps. So it's 4.5 by 6.5 and it's Pink Frog smooth card. I've then created a black mat that is 1/4 inch bigger and then a 5 by 7 inch card blank. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by using my Garden She Wrote, which is my alphabet stamp. It's got the months of the year on there as well. But I'm going to use the alphabet stamp set as a background. So let's just take this. Now, let me just see how much I want. So I'm just having a think about where my placement's going, etc. So, am I going to use the whole thing? Why not? So, it's always better when you're doing a background like this, is to ink more than you actually need. So I'm going to use my black VersaFine Clair, the Nocturne, so my black ink. I'm just going to give that a really good ink. And sometimes I like to use the alphabets, even though you can use them singly. I do sometimes like to use them as a background because it gives me an alternative background, and I like to use the stamp in as many ways as possible. I'm now inking the whole thing just because you never know quite where you're going to get. Not that piece. Grabbing a piece of copy paper seems to take me longer than anything else. So, the good thing about VersaFine Clair is it's got a good open time, so that gives me time just to have a think. Right, let's move that. Pick it up on the acetate. Just obviously what you do need to make sure is that if you're using it like this, you need to make sure that obviously everything is stuck down on your acetate. You know, if not, just give those stamps a little wash and the stickiness will come back again. Let's just move that down. So I'm just using this as a background stamp. And just leaving it on that acetate, and you can lift it up just from the corners, leaving your hand on there just to see if you've got a reasonable image. There we go. And there is my background stamp. It doesn't matter how you lay them on there or whether they're slightly slanted or whatever, it just adds to your background. So you've now got a background. So what I'm going to do then is I've cleared my desk just so it's a little bit tidier, just so that I've got space to move and you can see what I'm doing. And I always like to just take my time and not rush. So what I've got now is my Distress Oxide Lumberjack Plaid. I wanted a red and I haven't got a Candied Apple, so I looked at my other reds, so I thought this would be the best one. If you've got Candied Apple, that's a lovely red, and I'm using the Distress Oxide Reinker. You don't have to use the Distress Oxide Reinker. You can use your Distress Oxide sprays, or if you've got a red Posca pen, you can pump the pen to get the flow. So what I'm going to do is, I love that I can just use a tiny bit of colour. And I'm just going to add, look at that small, can you see it there, little small blob? And I'm just going to just spread that ink just like so. And I love the richness of colour. If you're not happy, just add a little touch of water and that will just spread it a little bit further for you. But just play around. Sometimes I don't like to dilute too much because I love the richness of colour. You do have to be aware that you're using pigment that obviously, if we don't add a little bit of water, it'll just lie there. Some of it will on the surface, so you want it to move a little bit. So I just add a little bit of water, but only a touch. And I love how you just add a touch of water and you get this spidery effect. And don't give up on it, just give it a little bit more work just to add to your spidery effect. And you can continue adding to that a little bit more water or a little less water, but you can see the small amount of pigment that I've used, and I'm just wiping up that little bit there so we don't get in a mess. So what I find with this is it's very controllable. So I'm going to add, look at this, a tiny blob, but it's the Reinker, so it's highly pigmented. So I can just, and you can see it moves a little bit, a little tiny bit. But if you add a little blob of water, that was hardly any, you'll get it to move a little bit easier for you. But I add a little bit of water at a time just to keep that rich pigment, just so that it works nicely. I love doing this, I'm like a child. Just to keep that. And it just makes for an interesting, dramatic background. So just keep turning your card. And say you're not happy, you know, oh, I'm not happy with that bit there, you can just add a little bit more water and just do it even more. So don't think, oh, you know, I've ruined it now, I can't do it, I can't move it. Because it's always, you know, it reacts with water, you can keep adding that water if you wish. But quite a nice effect there. Rather nice. There we go. Got a little bit of pigment there, just wipe that up. And I can let that dry a bit. Should I want it to dry? You can tilt your card a little bit as well. That'll help with your movement, just so that it moves even more. But lovely, beautiful, spidery effect. Web effect, sort of. Yes, it's lovely. Really like it for that background. Just, it's dramatic, it's bold, it's lovely. And what I want to do, let me just see if I've got it here. I want to see if I want to add a bit of a, you see, I was going to add a circle here with some more of those spidery things. But I actually like this so much that I don't want to add that circle on the top. I was going, you know, that was my plan, was to add a circle on top. But I love this so much that I don't want to do that. It's just turned out that the effect has just turned out better than I expected. So I don't want to do it. I just love it how it is. Let me just lift that up. I just think that is absolutely gorgeous. Right, let's move that out the way. I will need to give that a little bit of a dry, because some of that pigment, because it's a rich pigment, will just lie on the top. So we will need to give it a little bit dry, but we'll let it just do its thing. And I want to add one of my flowers. I think I'm going to add this middle flower here. So when I'm unsure, so I'm using my flower trio, stamp set 924. And if I'm unsure, I'm just going to bring this in and just see how my flower, it'll be beautiful on there. I am going to add some touches of white as well over the top of this. So we'll just do our flower first. Let's stamp this onto some spare card, which I did put on one side, but I've just, what have I done with it? You know when you pick a load of card up and you think, that wasn't very organised, was it? What did I do with that? Let's grab a little bit more. There we go. So we've got our white card again. I'm going to colour on. And I'm going to use that black ink again. And I just want the flower at the moment. Let's remove that little bit of over inking. And just stamp my flower. And it's a nice easy one to cut out. It's actually a bit duller here today. And I know I shouldn't say it, but it's quite a relief just to have a break from the hot sun. The garden does need a little bit of rain. So I'm just allowing that ink just to sit on there to give it time and not to rush the process. And can you see you've got a beautiful flower there which I want to cut out. And what I'm going to do is just stamp this element here in case I want to add a little bit of the background element. Just add that at the top, just so we don't waste that. There we go. Just so I can use that should I want to use it. And then I'm going to colour that before I cut it out. So let's grab some of my Ecoline pens. Right, where are we? Have we got the carmine? Now, if I always want something quick or simple, not necessarily quick, simple to use, I always tend to reach for my Ecoline pens. One, they give me vibrancy, and two, they're very easy to use, which I adore. I like simple. So I'm just going to add a little bit of the Ecoline pen, and the first colour is Carmine 318. Sometimes I get so engrossed that I forget to mention the colours. You get so engrossed in your video. So I'm using that Carmine just to add a bit of colour. So just add that. My son's just messaged me just as I'm doing the video and says, "Mum, I feel like I didn't shut the fridge." Can you believe it? Well, it's going to stay open now until I finish my video. But hilarious, he feels like he didn't shut the fridge. The things I have to do. So I'm just adding the carmine there. And I'm going to add a little bit to my non-stick craft sheet. And I'm going to pick up that colour, just a little bit of watered down colour. And just blend out the carmine. And obviously this is very sort of, it's my it's like a wash at the moment. It's not, it's got no depth, no nothing. So it needs more work. You're not going to get the beauty of a colour just with one colour. You know, it's very lined, it's got no blend, so you have to work on it a little bit. So I'm just going to add a little bit more of that colour. So I'm just taking my time just to blend the colour out and just make sure I don't have too much of a line. And we're going to work with that a bit more. I've then got reddish brown, which is 422. So I've got my reddish brown. And what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of the reddish brown just around the very sort of centre, just so it gives me a little bit more darkness around the edges of the petals here, just to give me a little bit more of that darkness, just so we get a little bit more depth. So we just take our time. I'm then going to add a little bit more of the Ecoline pen to my non-stick craft sheet, and then pick up that colour and just work a little bit slower and just blend in that colour. So what I'm doing is I'm picking up the first colour from my non-stick craft sheet just to blend like so. And you just need to take your time and build up those layers. And you can see that it gets better the more you sort of blend the colour. And if you're not happy and you want a bit more, go in directly with your pen and just add a little bit more vibrancy. And I sometimes use a flicking motion depending what I'm colouring, because sometimes that also helps to sort of, so you don't get a lined effect, to use that flicking motion. Just sort of alleviates that. Then I go back with the dark one, and you can blend pen to pen as well. So just have a look at what you've got and see which areas, you know, you're not happy with and need a little bit more blend. I'm then going to add that colour there, and when I pick it up with the water, it's like a wash of the same colour. I'm sort of blending that out. And you can see I'm leaving a little bit of a sort of lighter area just to give that some lightness and brightness. And I also always like to let the image rest a little bit, and then I can decide if I want to add any more of that colour. So we can cut our image out. There we go. I'm just going to leave a little tiny touch of a white border. Just so that that pops a little bit more. and gives a little bit of brightness to my design. And it's a lovely, easy flower to cut out. And you can see I'm not sort of touching that flower. I'm keeping my hands away from the flower so we don't smudge any of that wet ink with any moisture that's in my hand. And I'm turning the paper rather than my scissors. And the white edge just makes that pop a little bit more. We'll cut a really long stem because we can't decide how long we want it. And then we can just bend that like that. You can then also cut in to a couple of the petals, just so we can manipulate it a little bit more. But we won't manipulate it yet, just until it's dry a little bit, so we don't break them paper fibres down. So I'm just going to add this here, and I love the drama of the red. And what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to clean my brush because we want it rid of the red. Just going to take a bit because as you dilute it, it goes down to pink. And I don't want any of that red. And I know most of you will say, well, Tracy, just use a different brush. Yes, you could use a different brush. I just try to bring a little less product to the table, just so that I've got a little bit more space. That's why. So yes, you could use another brush, no problem at all. Okay. What I'm going to do is just pick a little bit of this pigment up. Now, this is Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. And I'm just going to use this. And it's bleed proof, which means that when I flick the paint, it should stay the white colour and it won't take on the colour of the oxide, which is usually the problem. So I'm adding these flicks here, and what you can do then, you guessed it, you can flick those as well. Just add a little bit of whiteness to that design, so you can flick those, but I will also add some splatters as well. There we go. So that's Dr. P.H. Bleed Proof White. And the idea is that that stays white. Again, you do need to make sure that you clean that brush, because that white pigment is, again, it's quite pigmented, so it stays in the brush quite a while. You need to just give it a clean. The only other thing I notice is that I splatter that everywhere, because obviously it's a little bit more fluid when you add the water. So I'm actually a good girl and I actually clean that up. Right, there we go. And I'm just getting just a beautiful, beautiful background. So my flower is going to go on here like so. I love the drama. So I'm just going to really, it needs to dry a little bit more. So what I'll do is I'll get my cotton, take the cotton, just to add a little bit more whiteness and texture to that card. And what I do is I've got my cotton here, and I sort of tend to just gently just tease it out, and then I just sort of, it flops on the card, and I just make sure some of the fibres are just sort of stretched out. And if I haven't got enough and it doesn't give enough of effect, I then add more. If it doesn't add enough of an effect or the textures that I want. There we go. So then I will just take a little bit more and stretch that out. You see, and that is a little bit bolder. Let me just hold that up. Just a little bit bolder, adding the texture. I'm then going to just pinch the little petals just to give a little bit more life to the design. No idea which pen, but let's just add a little touch of white with that, and a few touches of white with my gel pen, just to give a little bit more, just a few pops of white, just to add just to the design. I'm sort of just touching the pen just so that it just adds a little bit more of a pop of white to the design. It's always better if you just let that dry. It'll work a little bit easier for you than if you try and work on a wet surface. And just so that you can see that it's got some beautiful touches of white on there. And I'm then going to add my beautiful floral here, and you can use your ultra thick gel medium, your pads that you'd use. You can use a glue gun. I tend to not use a glue gun because for me it's not permanent, because eventually it does sort of dry out. But you can use a glue gun and then add a little bit of the pin flare on the top if you wish. If you want that permanent stick immediately, you could use your glue gun so that it doesn't move. Obviously this will move because it hasn't got that permanency yet. Just add that there, and you can just see the dimension that gives. Just love that. The drama of the red is just beautiful. Right, I've now got this little ticket here that I can just make use of to add to that. So I've got the ticket element from the bottom of the flower, and let's distress that a little bit. Now remember, if you're using sharp scissors, be very careful. I mean, I don't have a problem. Most of you might have the paper distressors, use those, but I do just have to let you know when you're using scissors, just to be careful. So just distress that a little bit. And what we're going to do is just add a little bit of colour just around this circle. Again, using the carmine, and then using a little bit of the reddish brown, just to give some darkness. Then going to use that red, and remember I've added that white to the paintbrush, so I just need to make sure that I clean that brush. Again, you can have lots of brushes. To the naked eye you might not see it, but the water is very milky, So what that means is there's a lot of that white pigment still in there. So just making sure that was gone. So just pick up that and then we can blend our colour just out a little bit. Take off the excess and just blend that out. If you want to add more colour, you can just go back in, add a little bit more richness with the colours, just to give it a little bit more depth. And then blend that out. Take off the excess. There we go. And then just leave a little bit, even if it's a little bit of white space, just so that it just highlights it a little bit more. And I'll add a little bit of white, but obviously we can't do that yet. Just going to just bend the ticket a little bit so it looks a bit more like a ticket. Like so. Just so we can add that to the outside edge. And then what I'm going to do, just as I put it there, what happens is it gets a little bit lost. So I'm going to add a little bit of my black Posca pen. Just to add a little bit of black to the edges, just so it's only going to be subtle, but it just adds a little bit of black to those edges. Just pick up a little bit of that fibre. And I just like to take my time with faffing just to make sure everything works. It just makes me happy. Right, so let's add a little bit so it's not quite so. That's it. So what I've got now is I've got my around hash 44 washi tape. And what I'm going to do is take some of that washi tape. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer. I'm not even going to think about it too much. And I'm going to layer some of the design. Because did you notice I didn't put any adhesive on the stem? Because normally I add adhesive. And I didn't add any adhesive because I knew that I was going to do this. So I'm just adding some of that washi. And because this is more of a papery washi, it's so much better to tear. You know, it hasn't got so much plastic element in it. And because it hasn't got that plasticky element in it, it works really well. So you can pick out words if you want. If you want those words to particularly show, you can pick those out. So there's the word dream here. You don't have to make it so certain words sort of stick out, because I'm going to add the washi here. Not the washi. What's this called? Spit it out, Tracy. The ticket. Let's add. So I'm just bringing it across here now. But because it's just got text on the washi, it works quite well. I don't have to worry, because I know that any words that are on there are going to work really well, because it's all about nature. Just add. See, I've got the word seeds. Speak to yourself, Tracy. And I do love a good faff. There we go. And I love that you can just overlay it and it will give texture. And what that does is it just lifts the ticket up from the background. So I can continue with that. Now is the end. What other words are coming up? Harmony. Let's use that. I just love playing with washi. Just adds, it's like having, you know how I add the index clips? This is like having a bit of an embellishment with these bits of washi. It's like embellishing your card, but you're using those bits of papery washi to add that element. Perfect. I've now got that pop of black that really helps. Just adding, and obviously I don't mind it having dimension. If you don't want it to have dimension, that's absolutely fine. Don't add that dimension if you don't wish. But I just love, oops, the drama of this piece, and it looks so much better when we add it to a black mat, because it'll bring out that black that's in the washi as well. Let's move these bits of card out the way. Should be able to fit it on there. And let's just grab our little Quill Ends, which is stamp set 908. We're going to use that stamp set. It's just beautiful for adding, as it can be used as a whole, but just adding some little extra touches like the bird. So it works quite nicely because you can sit the bird wherever you wish, and it works beautifully. There we go. You can add the pen nib if you wish. Let's just take that and cut that out. There they are. So just take that. Let's cut the pen nib out. If you don't want to add the pen nib, you can leave the pen nib and just add your bird, but options are there, which is quite nice. And the red, it really does add some drama, and it really adds to the impact of the card for me. Okay, it's lovely, just adds to that impact. And we can add our bird. You see, because I've bent the ticket, it doesn't quite sit how I want it to. So let's hold the bird there. Yeah, it just doesn't quite sit how I want it. Let me just have a look at that. Of course, I'm going to spend ages just doing that. No, it adds nothing at all for me, so I'm keeping the pen nib out. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the red just to that flower inside the bird. Couple of little touches of white, and I will add a little bit of my pin flare glue just to my bird. You can use your tweezers, which Tracy did have somewhere. I thought I was going to be clever and have my tweezers ready. They're in this jar somewhere. I can't be bothered to. You can use your tweezers just to pick up your bead, hold the bead, and then add your pin flare. It just makes it a lot easier for you. So just, that bead is just up from the card, which is quite nice. Just so that you can see that. Just, and my background is just beautiful against that. And then just on the stamp set, we've got the Elegance word, which I'm going to use just on the same Flower Trio stamp set. Let's just use the same acrylic block. There we go. I always find the florals and a touch of colour really appealing. So let's just add that Elegance. There we go. I bought my little fur baby a ball, and you know, I've left it here on my desk. What was I saying about not having anything much on my desk? Well, I've actually got a dog's toy on my desk, but I did clear it, I promise. So just cut that out. There we go. And check your fingers. See, I've got a little blob of black on my finger. It's so easy to do because obviously the ink stays wetter longer, and if you touch something with the black, it's so easy just to smudge things. Let's cut down that a little bit more. Yes, and I even faff with a little bit of this. And I'm then going to just go around with my black Posca pen, just to add a little bit of a border. There we go. I was just taking off a little bit of fluff, you know, when I distress the edges of my card. It's good just to give the sentiment a little bit of time to dry before you do anything with that. So I'm just going to add the word Elegance just here, like so. I just want a bit at the end. I'm just going to add a little bit of pin flare at the ends. And this is where I faff for England. There we go. Now what I want to do is I want to just add a few splatters around about where the washi is, just so that it comes into the project. Not many, and just a few splatters, that's it, on that circle. There we go. Obviously when you're using your Posca pen, it's not like that bleed proof. You know, it will take on the colour that anything that's water reactive. I'm then going to, you can give your card a bit of a dry. If you've got areas that are still glossy from the ink, give that a dry with your heat tool. Mine seems not too bad at all. Right. What you can do also with your background, if you're finding it's still a bit wet, blot it with your copier paper before you add your flower and then dry it a little bit. So just have a look at it and see what you think. I'm then going to, that's only because you've got a lot of pigment that you've used from the Reinker that may just be resting on the surface. There we go. Let's just add this to a black mat. And for me, it sings when it's added to the black mat. It just really, really pops. And then we're going to add that to our 5x7 card blank. There we go. And just add that to make sure your card's going the right way. So easy to make an upside down card. Ask me how I know. The voice of experience from making the mistakes. Right, so just, there we go. And what you can see is we've got a beautiful card. Now what I'll do, when this is dry, I'm going to add a little dash of white here, just to make that pop. But I adore the drama of that piece. Absolutely love it. And the washi works beautifully. So I hope you've enjoyed the step-by-steps, and I hope you'll give it a try. I can't wait to see your interpretations. The only other thing left to let you know about is I have a new release on Thursday. It's actually Wednesday today, so that's tomorrow, and it's actually available to purchase. I would think tea time today, around about 5 o'clock-ish today, it'll be available to purchase, and it's a new release. Now normally, you know me, I'll have a new release and I'll come here on YouTube and I'll show you the stamps in detail. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen delays, I don't have the stamps as at the moment, but they should arrive any day. So when they arrive, be assured that I will come onto YouTube, go through the stamps, my inspiration, and I will also make a project. And you know me by now, I will make sure that there's lots of inspiration with the stamps. They will be used in the snippets. They will be used like this in full projects. So there'll be lots to inspire you. And I have to say, I adore the release. Of course I do. You know, I wouldn't design them if I didn't adore them. But you will notice when you see the stamps on Create and Craft, when they're available to buy later today, you will notice that they work beautifully with the stencils as well. I'm working harder and harder to improve my processes, to improve and fine-tune my releases, so that the releases that were bought out 2 years ago can be used more and more and more with your new releases, so that they never, ever, ever get old. And you'll spot that from this latest release as well. So love to all. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.